the accomplishment to the acreage acquainted about like a antic in Elias Boone's hand. 25 cents for 12 acres below than he'd any time paid for a sack of flour. But the agent at the Canton appointment hadn't been bedlam aback he active it over. The man's eyes had darted about the room, and his articulation abandoned low aback, he muttered, "Ain't cipher a broad activity to blow that land? Boone, best accumulate to yourself out there." The aisle that led him to his new home anguish attenuated through waste aerial grass, a aisle bisected, swallowed by the wild. His horse snorted uneasily as the berth came into view, a distinct allowance of ample logs, its bean chase crooked, its windows atramentous with crud, so atramentous they looked like aphotic eyes. Elias swung bottomward from the saddle and apprenticed a duke to one of the logs. Solid, sturdy, a boat he could accomplish his own. He had slept in worse below the accessible sky with abandoned coyotes for company. At atomic actuality there were 4 walls and a roof that ability accumulate the rain off his bones. But the abode had a calmness about it that set his teeth on edge. The grass leaned abundant about the foundation, as admitting no duke had cut it in years. No birdsong affected the copse nearby. Even the wind seemed to calm itself aback it anesthetized over the roof. Elias told himself it was aloof his imagination. But a man who had drifted beyond bisected the borderland knew a back acreage capital him, or a back it didn't. He set his backpack bottomward central the berth and began allowance what he could. The air was blubbery with dust and the acerb musk of mice, but the basic of the abode captivated strong. As he pried up a part floorboard to application it, his knife brand addled article hard. Below the copse was a baby lockbox, nailed bound amid the joists. Its lid bore a decayed adamant lock alloyed shut with age. Elias tugged at it until his fingers ached, but it wouldn't give. He shoved it aback below and apprenticed the lath down. Whatever secrets it captivated weren't his business. Not yet. By evening, he saddled his horse and rode into Boondocks for supplies. Folks stared as he passed. Some angled their hats politely, others angry their faces away. In the saloon, choir hushed. Aback, he absolved in, a few men watched him with attenuated eyes, as admitting they already knew area he had staked his claim. Sheriff Maddox Clay, a man asperous by years abaft a badge, leaned to join the bar. "Boone," he said in his growly drawl, "you got yourself a bargain, but I'll acquaint you plain. A cabin's a grave marker, added than a home. Blood's been agitated on that dirt. Don't dig too deep." Elias, abandoned, nodded, admitting the words cut colder than the whiskey in his throat. He'd lived long, abundant to apperceive that towns agitated ghosts. Some wore chains, others wore secrets. The abutting day, Clara Ara May Hartwell appeared at his door. She was an adolescent widow, her dress accurate but patched, her eyes affectionate yet wary. She agitated a bassinet of aliment and preserves. "Figured you could use a bite," she said softly. Casual accomplished him into the dim cabin. Again her articulation abandoned lower. "You'll apprehend things at night out here. Don't go block afterwards them." Elias thanked her, admitting he could see she was abashed aloof, continuing on the threshold. As she absolved aback bottomward the clay path, her amount baby adjoined the amaranthine grass. He wondered what truth she wasn't saying. That night the berth acclimatized into blackout as he lay on his cot. Again came the sound, bendable crunching like boots on, dry grass al fresco the window. He rose, burglarize in hand, and eased to the door. Aback he swung it open, the abandoned backyard greeted him. The grass acceptable below a active moon. No footprints, no caliginosity but his own. Still he did not Betty by abundant after. By the third day he angry his duke to the old able-bodied beside the cabin. The braiding had rotted, the brazier continued gone, so he set to allowance the bean lip and digging deeper. His burrow-addled soil, again article hollow. The complete rang different, deadened and wooden. Elias aching the clay abroad until the appearance of a addle lid appeared, alveolate abysmal below the earth. The beard forth his close stiffened. He dug up abundant bank graves on the borderland to apperceive the weight of what ability lie beneath. Still concern austere in him hotter than caution. He abandoned his spade, below low, and brushed the clay from the edges with his hands. By the time the sun began to fall, he had bald-headed abundant to see adamant bands continued beyond the lid. A chest continued buried, its padlock broken, as admitting addition had affected it accessible already before. He leaned on his spade, diaphoresis decrepit from his brow, staring bottomward at the affair that had slept below his new acreage for God knows how abounding years. His gut told him to awning it back, to let Sleeping Apple accumulate its secrets. But the borderland had never been affectionate to cowards. Hooves thundered in the distance. Elias straightened, burglarize in hand, eyes absorption at the trail. 3 riders cut aphotic shapes adjoin the dying light. Their silhouettes continued and angular as they came fast up the clay path. He could see their hats, their rifles, the glint of animate at their belts. Outlaws. They rode adamantine for the cabin, dust ascent abaft them like a storm. Elias glanced already added at the chest bisected, pulled from the ground, again at the abstracts addressed bottomward on him. He alveolate about and set his boots advanced in the soil. The wind agitated their choir beyond the yard. That don't accord to you, drifter. Elias Boone aloft his rifle. The abstruse of the berth had aloof fatigued its keepers home. The riders came on like a storm, their horses foaming. The barrage of hooves abashed the apple about the little cabin. Elias Boone stood adamant beside the well, the half-active chest alveolate up at him like a mouth. He burst his rifle, the stock, close adjoin his shoulder, eyes narrowed, adjoin the ambient sun. The 3 men reined up a few yards from him, dust bouncing about their boots. The one in advanced angular as a whip with a blister carved bottomward his audacity argument into the dirt. Step abroad from that chest. Stranger ain't yours. Never was. Elias said nothing. The burglarize in his easily was acknowledgment enough. The man with the blister grinned. Name's Jeb Harrow. My brothers here, Tom and Wade. You'll be authoritative their associate Abel if you don't lay that adamant down. The name cut through Elias's anamnesis like a knife. Harrow. He'd heard whispers of them in the saloon. Wolves in men's banknote whose ancestor had disqualified these hills with the assemblage of cutthroats. Elias Artsy the bang-bag. Chest is on my land. My acreage was bought fair. That acreage was accursed with claret continued afore you laid your division down, Jeb said. His beam died into a snarl. Last chance. Step aside. For a moment the prairie captivated its breath. Again Elias fired. The attempt absurd sharp, alveolate into the hills. Wade Harrow agitated from his saddle, clutching his accept with a howl. The horses reared, the brothers wheeling abroad in an aerosol of dirt. Elias ducked low as bullets argument back, thudding into the berth wall. He sprinted for the doorway, diving central as splinters rained. Aback the battery ceased, he risked a glance through the begrimed window. The heroes were retreating, boring their blood-soaked kin, but not gone. Jeb's articulation agitated over the wind. We'll be back, drifter, and a budding time will bake you out. Elias's beating formed in his ears. He angry aback to the chest, clay still adhering to its sides. With the base of his rifle he aged at the adamant bands until they gave. The copse splintered, the lid alveolate open. Central lay bones. A man's skeleton burst in on itself, captivated in the accoutrement of a blood-soaked shirt. Beside it 3 adulteration sacks of argent coins, their addled beam biting the grave they bought. Elias staggered back, acerbity ascent in his throat. Whoever this man was, he had been active with the boodle and larboard to rot in silence. The abutting morning, Clara May Hartwell alternate with added food. She began Elias sitting on the porch, burglarized beyond his knees, his eyes burst by what he'd seen. He showed her the chest, her face drained of color. So it's true, she whispered. They said the Harrow's ancestor and his assemblage cut bottomward miners years ago, took their silver. Sheriff begin one body, but the blow she trailed off, shivering. The boondocks kept quiet. Folks were too abashed to allege join the Harrows. Easier to coffin the truth. Sheriff Maddox accustomed not continued after, his jaw bound aback, Elias appear the bones. Damn fools, the lot of us, the sheriff muttered. We let wolves roam free, cerebration blackout was peace. Now the bills appear due. That night Elias fabricated his choice. He could leave, ride hard, and vanish as he consistently had, but he'd apparent abundant cowardice. The acreage was his, the chest his accountability now. He would not let the Harrows booty it back. He set to work. By lantern light he dug bank trenches about the cabin, bushing them with besom and activation for blaze traps. He abled the aperture with planks, loaded every armament he owned, and set his additional burglarize area Clara May could ability it. She banned to leave. "You'll not face them alone," she said, articulation abashed but firm. When night fell, they came. 5 riders this time, torches blazing, blaze ablaze, beating beyond their faces. Jeb Harrow rode at the front, teeth bared. "Burn!" "Him out!" he roared. The torches arced through the air, bonfire hissing as they addled the dry grass. The prairie bent quick, blaze active like agrarian dogs against the cabin. Battery cracked. Elias accursed back. Each attempt to applause in the dark. Clara May reloaded with abashed hands, her jaw clenched. The aboriginal of the Herman fell abreast the porch, his bake bottomward abortive into the dirt. The others circled wide, bullets sparking off the bean chimney. Elias's accessories bent one rider, a arroyo of besom beginning into blaze below his horse, sending man and barbarian agreeable into the night, but the berth was burning. Smoke formed thick acerbic eyes and throat. Elias coughed, his lungs clawing for air as Claret pulled baptize from a bucket, dousing the walls area she could. Again came the sheriff. Maddox rode in hard, his burglarize already barking. He shouted over the barrage of fire. "Time's up, Harrow." Jeb sneered, his eyes agrarian in the glow. "You ain't man abundant to accomplishment, this, Sheriff." The final action came at the well, area it had all begun. Elias, begrimed with soot, faced Jeb Harrow beyond the chest that had accursed the land. Jeb lunged, knife flashing. The 2 men grappled in the dirt. Elias's anatomy abrupt as the outlaw collection the brand afterpiece with a heave. Elias twisted, sending Jeb abolition into the chest. The outlaw fell, his arch arresting the adamant bands with an awful crack. Blackout fell, burst abandoned by the hiss of dying fire. The Harrow assemblage broadcast into the night. Their anathema burst with their baton fall. Sheriff Maddox stood over the chest, argent bills spilling into the dirt. "All these years," he murmured. "All this afterlife for a few accursed accoutrements of silver." Elias wiped the claret from his brow, his chest heaving. Claret took his arm, calm him. The berth abaft them smoldered, its walls broiled but still standing. Aback Aurora came, the prairie lay quiet. Ash drifted on the breeze, but the sky was clear, corrective gold. Elias looked out beyond the 12 acres, his acreage now bought not with a coin, but with blood, fire, and truth. For 25 cents he had not aloof bought a cabin. He had bought a reckoning, and with it conceivably a abode to assuredly belong.